The Galactic Council thought they were being merciful when they exiled humanity to the death world of Kalara Prime. After all, most species would have been exterminated for the crime of being too aggressive for civilized space. Instead, they gave humans a choice: permanent exile to a planet where nothing had ever survived longer than a few months, or complete genetic modification to remove their violent tendencies. The humans chose exile. The Council expected to receive a distress beacon within weeks, followed by desperate pleas for rescue. What they got instead, 3 years later, was something that would shake the very foundations of galactic civilization. The humans hadn't just survived on Kalara Prime, they had thrived. More terrifyingly, they had done something no species in recorded history had ever accomplished. They had turned a death world into their hunting ground. Now, as alien ships begin disappearing near the Kalara system and disturbing reports filter back from the few survivors, the Galactic Council is beginning to realize they may have made the greatest mistake in their 10,000-year history. They didn't exile humanity's aggression. They concentrated it, refined it, and gave it an entire world to perfect itself upon. The humans are no longer the hunted. They have become something far worse: the hunters who learned to love the hunt. The first thing Captain Marcus Chen learned about Kalara Prime was that the planet wanted him dead. Not in the abstract way that most hostile worlds presented danger, but in a personal, intimate way that seemed to target him specifically. The second thing he learned was that the feeling was mutual. Chen stood at the edge of what the Galactic Council's survey data optimistically called a landing zone, watching as his ship, the last transport off Earth, disappeared into the crimson sky above. The atmospheric composition was technically breathable for humans, though each breath felt like inhaling liquid fire mixed with the essence of rotting metal. Around him, the other 2,000 exiles from Earth were setting up their temporary shelters with the kind of grim efficiency that came from knowing there might not be a tomorrow. The landscape stretched before them like a fever dream painted by a madman. Crystalline trees that sang in frequencies that made human teeth ache rose from soil that shifted color from deep purple to sickly yellow depending on the time of day. In the distance, something that might have been mountains moved with slow, deliberate purpose. The gravity was 0.8 Earth standard, which should have made movement easier. But the constant electrical storms in the upper atmosphere created a pressure differential that left everyone feeling like they were walking through thick soup. "Sir," came a voice behind him. Chen turned to see Lieutenant Sarah Voss, formerly of the Earth Defense Force's Special Operations Division. Like Chen, like most of the humans here, she had been given the choice between exile and genetic modification. Unlike the politicians and bureaucrats who had chosen the surgery, the military personnel had almost universally chosen the unknown dangers of Kalara Prime over the known certainty of losing what made them human. "What's our situation, Lieutenant?" Chen asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Voss gestured toward the makeshift camp. "Supplies for 6 months if we're careful, 12 if we're willing to starve slowly. No way to contact the outside galaxy, assuming anyone would answer. The good news is that the atmospheric processes they dropped with us are working. The bad news is that the local wildlife has already taken an interest in them." Chen followed her gaze and saw what she meant. Creatures that looked like a cross between a spider and a praying mantis, each the size of a small car, were circling the atmospheric processes at a respectful distance. Their movements were too coordinated to be coincidental, too purposeful to be merely curious. They were hunting. "Any indication what they're waiting for?" Chen asked. "Nightfall, if I had to guess. Local day cycle is about 32 Earth hours. We've been here for 6 hours, which means we have roughly 26 hours to figure out how to survive our first night." Chen nodded grimly. The Galactic Council had made it clear that Kalara Prime was a death world, a place where even the hardiest species had never managed to establish a foothold. What they hadn't mentioned, what Chen was beginning to suspect they didn't know, was that Kalara Prime wasn't just hostile to life. It was actively malevolent. As if summoned by his thoughts, the ground beneath their feet began to vibrate with a low rhythmic pulse. Chen had felt similar vibrations during his time in the Afghan mountains, usually just before an avalanche. But this felt different, more organic, as if the planet itself had a heartbeat. "Everyone to the center of the camp," Chen shouted. Now, the colonists moved with practiced efficiency, grabbing essential supplies and converging on the cleared area around the atmospheric processes. As they did, the spider mantis creatures began to close in, their movements becoming more aggressive. But they weren't the only threat. The crystalline trees had begun to sing louder, their alien harmonies creating a sound that seemed to bypass the ears and strike directly at the brainstem. Several colonists stumbled, clutching their heads in pain. Blood began to trickle from ears and noses. Doc! Doc! Rebecca Martinez, the colony's chief medical officer, was moving from person to person, but Chen could see from her expression that she had no idea how to treat this particular ailment. The trees are some kind of sonic weapon, Voss observed, her voice tight with concentration as she fought the effects. They're softening us up for the ground predators. Chen felt his respect for the planet's lethality increase. This wasn't random hostility. This was coordinated, intelligent hunting behavior on an ecosystem level. The trees weren't just plants. They were part of a larger predatory system that had evolved to hunt as a collective entity. Ideas, Lieutenant? He asked, though he was already forming his own. We could try to take out the trees, but there are hundreds of them in range. We could retreat to the ship's landing site, but the spider things are already between us and there. Or, she paused, looking at Chen with an expression he recognized from their time together in special operations. Or, we could remind this planet why the Galactic Council thought we were too dangerous for civilized space, Chen finished. Voss smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Exactly what I was thinking, sir. Chen turned to address the colonists. Most of them were civilians, refugees from Earth's various conflicts who had chosen exile over surrender. But scattered among them were soldiers, engineers, scientists, and others who had refused to give up the fundamental aggression that the galaxy found so troubling. They were scared, injured, and facing certain death. They were also, Chen realized, exactly where they needed to be. Listen up, he called out, his voice carrying over the alien song of the crystal trees. The Galactic Council sent us here because they thought we were too violent, too aggressive, too dangerous for their peaceful galaxy. They thought this planet would humble us, maybe kill us, certainly break us. The sonic assault from the trees intensified, and several more colonists collapsed. But Chen continued speaking, his voice growing stronger with each word. They were wrong about one thing. This planet won't break us. But they were right about everything else. We are violent, we are aggressive, we are dangerous, and right now that's exactly what we need to be. Chen pulled out his sidearm, a plasma pistol that was technically classified as a personal defense weapon but had enough stopping power to punch through light armor. Around him, other colonists were doing the same, drawing weapons that the Galactic Council had permitted them to keep for basic survival needs. The trees think they're hunters, Chen continued. The spider things think they're predators. This planet thinks it's a death world that will consume us like it has every other species that tried to settle here. He raised his weapon and took aim at the nearest crystalline tree. Its song was particularly loud, its alien notes seeming to target him personally. They're about to learn that Earth didn't send them prey. Earth sent them predators. Chen fired. The plasma bolt struck the crystal tree center mass, and the alien plant exploded in a shower of sparks and shattered mineral. The sudden silence was deafening. Then, as if responding to a signal, every human in the camp opened fire. The next few minutes were chaos. Plasma bolts and projectile rounds filled the air as 2,000 humans turned their weapons on the hostile ecosystem around them. The spider mantis creatures charged, only to discover that humans had spent millennia perfecting the art of killing things that wanted to kill them first. The creatures were fast, but human reflexes honed by generations of warfare were faster. They were strong, but human weapons designed to kill other humans were stronger. They were coordinated, but humans had turned coordination in battle into an art form. Chen watched a former Marine named Rodriguez take down 3 of the spider creatures with a combination of precisely placed shots and a combat knife that had seen action on 4 different worlds. Nearby, a group of civilian engineers had improvised explosive devices from their construction equipment and were systematically destroying the nearest grove of crystalline trees. But it was Dr. Kayari, Martinez, who provided the most valuable intelligence. As the battle raged around them, she had been studying the fallen creatures with scientific fascination. "Captain," she called out, her voice excited despite the circumstances. "These things aren't individual organisms. Look at this." Chen made his way over to where she was examining one of the spider creatures. What he saw made him whistle in appreciation. The creature's nervous system was unlike anything in human experience, not because it was alien, but because it wasn't really individual at all. Fiber optic-like strands extended from its brain case, clearly designed to connect with similar strands in other creatures. It's a hive mind, Martinez explained. Not just the spider things, but probably everything on this planet. The trees, the ground organisms, the atmospheric phenomena, they're all connected. The entire ecosystem is essentially one massive superorganism. Chen felt a chill that had nothing to do with Kalara Prime's alien weather patterns. "You're saying the planet itself is intelligent?" "More than intelligent. It's a single, unified predator the size of an entire world. No wonder nothing has ever survived here for long. It's not just that the environment is hostile, the environment is actively, intelligently hunting anything that doesn't belong. As if responding to her words, the ground beneath their feet began to shift and buckle. New creatures began emerging from what had appeared to be solid rock, things that looked like living siege engines crossed with organic artillery pieces. The planet was adapting, bringing new weapons to bear against the humans. But Chen was smiling now, and his expression was mirrored on the faces of the colonists around him. This wasn't a disaster. This was an opportunity. You hear that? He called out to his people. The whole planet is trying to kill us. Not just parts of it, not just some of the local wildlife. All of it. Everything. He reloaded his weapon with smooth, practiced motions. Around him, the other humans were doing the same. Veterans of Earth's wars, survivors of humanity's most desperate conflicts, refugees who had chosen exile over surrender. They had been cast out by a galaxy that found their nature too violent, too aggressive, too fundamentally dangerous. They had been sent to a world that thought it could hunt them. Well, Chen said, taking aim at one of the emerging siege creatures, let's show this planet what happens when it tries to hunt the species that turned hunting into a science. The battle that followed would later be remembered as the first night of Kalara Prime, though battle wasn't really an accurate description. It was more like a masterclass in applied violence, taught by a species that had spent its entire evolutionary history perfecting the art of killing anything that threatened it. The planet mind had never encountered anything like humans before. It had faced other species, other colonization attempts, but those had been civilized races that relied on technology and infrastructure. When their technology failed, they died. When their infrastructure collapsed, they surrendered. Humans were different. When their technology failed, they picked up rocks. When their infrastructure collapsed, they built new infrastructure out of the bones of their enemies. They didn't just adapt to hostile environments. They conquered them, reshaped them, made them into extensions of human will. By dawn, the immediate area around the colony was littered with the remains of crystal trees and spider creatures. The siege beasts had retreated underground, and the planet's coordinated assault had dissolved into scattered, uncoordinated attacks. The hive mind was still trying to understand what had happened, how its perfectly coordinated hunting system had been not just defeated, but systematically dismantled. Chen stood in the center of the colony, looking out at the alien landscape with new eyes. The planet was still hostile, still dangerous, still actively trying to kill them. But for the first time since they had landed, he was beginning to think they might actually have a chance. More than that, he was beginning to think the Galactic Council might have made a serious mistake. "Sir," Voss appeared at his side, her uniform torn and stained with alien ichor, but her expression triumphant. "Casualty report? Go ahead." 17 wounded, none seriously, 0 KIA. We've established a defensive perimeter, and the engineering teams are already working on permanent fortifications. Dr. Martinez wants to study the remains of the creatures we killed, and the agricultural specialists think they can adapt some of the local plant life for food production. Chen nodded, but his attention was focused on something else. In the distance, he could see more movement, not the random scuttling of individual creatures, but the coordinated advance of what looked like an entire ecosystem mobilizing for war. The planet hadn't given up. If anything, it was escalating. "Lieutenant," he said quietly, "I want you to establish a communication schedule with all the other settlements. Every 6 hours, full status reports. And I want to start training programs immediately. Combat tactics, weapons maintenance, ecosystem analysis. Everything we've learned in the last 24 hours needs to be shared with every human on this planet." "Yes, sir. And if I may ask, what's our long-term strategy?" Chen smiled, and there was something in his expression that would have made the members of the Galactic Council very, very nervous if they could have seen it. "Our long-term strategy, Lieutenant, is to teach this planet that it picked the wrong species to hunt. We're going to turn Kalara Prime into humanity's hunting ground. And then, when we're done with that, we're going to have a conversation with the Galactic Council about their definition of too aggressive for civilized space." As the alien sun rose over Kalara Prime, casting its harsh light over a battlefield where humans had faced an entire world and won, Captain Marcus Chen began to plan for a future that the galaxy wasn't ready for. Humanity had been exiled for being too dangerous. They were about to prove that exile had been the galaxy's first mistake, and if the Galactic Council wasn't careful, it wouldn't be their last. 3 months after the first night, Dr. Rebecca Martinez made a discovery that changed everything. She was dissecting her 47th specimen of Kalaran wildlife when she noticed something that shouldn't have been possible. The creatures were evolving, not over generations, not through natural selection, but within their own lifespans. The spider mantis creatures that had attacked the colony during the first week were already demonstrably different from the ones they were fighting now. Faster reflexes, harder carapaces, more efficient nervous systems. The planet was adapting to human tactics in real time. "Captain!" She called over the comm system that Chen's engineers had cobbled together from salvaged transport equipment. "You need to see this." Now, Chen arrived at Martinez's makeshift laboratory 15 minutes later, followed by Lieutenant Voss and Master Sergeant Kim Wu, a former Special Forces operator who had become Chen's unofficial advisor on matters of planetary warfare. The lab was a converted cargo container, cramped and cluttered with alien specimens and jury-rigged analysis equipment. "Show me," Chen said without preamble. Martinez gestured to a table covered with dissected creatures. "These are all spider mantis specimens collected over the past 12 weeks. Notice the progression." She pointed to the first specimen, then moved down the table. Week 1. Basic chitin armor, simple nervous system, predictable attack patterns. Week 4. Reinforced armor plating, enhanced neural pathways, tactical coordination. Week 12. Look at this. She indicated the most recent specimen, and Chen felt his blood chill. The creature was clearly recognizable as the same species they had first encountered, but it had been improved in every possible way. The armor plating was thicker and showed evidence of angular design meant to deflect projectile weapons. The claws had been redesigned for better grip and penetration. Most disturbing of all, the neural tissue showed clear signs of enhanced pattern recognition capabilities. "It's learning," Wu observed grimly. "The whole damn planet is studying us." "More than that," Martinez continued, "I've been analyzing the communication networks between different organisms, and the complexity is increasing exponentially. 3 months ago, we were fighting individual creatures controlled by a simple hive mind. Now we're facing something that looks more like a distributed intelligence system with specialized military units." Chen studied the specimens, his mind racing through the implications. How fast is this evolution happening? Based on my observations, major adaptations are occurring roughly every 3 to 4 weeks. Minor tactical adjustments happen even faster, sometimes within days of encountering a new human strategy. "That's impossible," Voss said. "Evolution doesn't work that way." "Traditional evolution doesn't," Martinez agreed. "But this isn't traditional evolution. The planet mind is directly modifying its component organisms based on combat experience. It's like fighting an enemy that gets better every time you beat them." Chen was quiet for a long moment, considering the tactical situation. They had established 7 colonies scattered across Kalara Prime's main continent, each one a fortress carved out of hostile wilderness, through sheer human stubbornness and superior firepower. The colonies were connected by comm networks and supply lines, creating a human presence that had not only survived, but begun to thrive on the death world. But if the planet was actively learning from their tactics, adapting to counter their strategies, then their current success might be temporary. "What's our response?" he asked finally. Wu grinned, and the expression was not pleasant. "Same thing we always do when the enemy starts adapting, sir. We adapt faster." Chen nodded slowly. "Martinez, I want you to share this data with all the colonies immediately. Wu, start working with the other settlements on new tactical doctrines. We need to stay ahead of this thing's learning curve." "And if we can't?" Voss asked. Chen looked at her, then at the specimens on the table, then at the view outside the lab's small window. In the distance, he could see the ever-changing landscape of Kalara Prime, its alien geography shifting subtly as the planet mind reorganized itself for the next phase of the conflict. "Then we make sure the planet learns the most important lesson about fighting humans," he said. "We don't just adapt to our enemies, we make them regret teaching us how to fight them better." The proof of Chen's words came 2 weeks later, during what would become known as the Siege of New Sacramento. The settlement, located in a strategic valley that controlled access to 3 different mineral deposits, had been under constant pressure from increasingly sophisticated attacks. The planet had learned to coordinate its assaults, using crystal trees to provide covering fire while ground forces maneuvered for flanking attacks. Colonel Sarah Rodriguez, the settlement's commander, and Chen's former Marine colleague, had been expecting the escalation. What she hadn't expected was the scale of it. "Contact!" came the voice of Corporal Jake Mitchell over the comm. Multiple contacts approaching from all vectors. Jesus Christ, there's hundreds of them. Rodriguez moved to the command bunker's observation deck and felt her stomach drop. The valley below was filled with creatures unlike anything they had encountered before. The basic Spider-Mantis design had been retained, but these new variants were clearly specialized for different roles. Heavy assault units with enhanced armor and close combat weapons. Fast attack units designed for reconnaissance and harassment. Support units that appeared to be living artillery pieces, but it was the command units that worried her most. Larger than the others, with more sophisticated neural tissue visible through translucent armor plating. These weren't just evolved versions of the original creatures, they were purpose-built military officers, created by a planet that was learning to fight like humans. Rodriguez to all units. She transmitted, "This is not a raid. Repeat, this is not a raid. We are facing a full-scale military assault with organized command structure and specialized units. Execute Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was something that had been developed during the third month of the settlement, when it became clear that conventional defensive tactics weren't going to be sufficient against an enemy that could adapt in real time.
It was based on a simple principle that every human soldier understood instinctively. When you're outnumbered and outgunned, you don't fight fair.
The first phase involved abandoning the outer defensive perimeter entirely, allowing the alien forces to advance into what appeared to be a successful breach. The creatures poured into the settlement, their coordinated assault overwhelming the automated defenses exactly as their planet mind had calculated. What the planet mind hadn't calculated was that humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of the tactical retreat. The apparent collapse of human defenses was actually a carefully orchestrated withdrawal designed to draw the enemy into a kill zone. The second phase began when the alien forces reached the center of the settlement. Hidden charges that had been placed weeks earlier detonated simultaneously, collapsing key buildings and creating a maze of rubble that broke up the aliens' coordinated formations. Suddenly, the creatures found themselves fighting not an organized battle, but 100 separate skirmishes in urban terrain that had been specifically designed to favor human tactics. Rodriguez watched from her command bunker as her people demonstrated why urban warfare had been a human specialty long before they reached the stars. Sniper teams picked off command units from concealed positions. Demolition experts collapsed buildings on advancing formations. Close-quarters specialists ambushed isolated groups with weapons designed for shipboard fighting. The planet mind tried to adapt, ordering its forces to withdraw and regroup. But this activated the third phase of Protocol 7, pursuit and harassment. Human forces emerged from their concealed positions and began hunting the retreating aliens with a coordination that rivaled the planet's own hive mind. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the valley floor was littered with alien corpses, and Rodriguez's forces had suffered only minimal casualties. More importantly, they had captured several of the command units alive, providing Martinez with her first opportunity to study the planet's enhanced intelligence directly. But as Rodriguez walked through the aftermath of the battle, she couldn't shake the feeling that they had won too easily. The planet mind was learning, adapting, evolving. Each battle taught it more about human tactics and capabilities. Eventually, it would develop countermeasures that humans couldn't overcome, unless humans developed countermeasures first. The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Lisa Park, a xenobiologist who had been studying Kalara Prime's ecosystem from the perspective of biological warfare. Park had been working on a theory that the planet mind's greatest strength, its unified consciousness, might also be its greatest vulnerability. It's like a computer network, she explained to the assembled colony commanders during their monthly strategy conference. The more connected it becomes, the more vulnerable it is to system-wide attacks. Chen leaned forward in his chair. Explain. The planet mind coordinates its activities through bioelectric fields generated by specialized organs in each organism. It's incredibly efficient, but it also means that every creature is essentially broadcasting its thoughts and receiving orders through the same network. If we could disrupt that network, we could blind the entire system, Wu finished. Cut off the hive mind's ability to coordinate attacks. More than that, Park continued. Based on my analysis, a sufficient disruption might actually cause temporary neural damage across the entire network. We could potentially stun the planet mind itself. Rodriguez looked skeptical. What kind of disruption are we talking about? The bioelectric fields you're describing would require massive interference to affect them on a planetary scale. Not planetary scale, just local scale, but amplified through the network's own connectivity. If we could generate a powerful enough electromagnetic pulse at the right frequency, the planet's own nervous system would carry the disruption to every connected organism. Chen felt a familiar sensation, the same one he had experienced during the first night when he realized that Kalara Prime had made a fundamental mistake in choosing humans as prey. The planet mind was indeed learning, adapting, evolving into a more formidable opponent. But it was learning to fight like humans, without understanding what made humans truly dangerous. Their willingness to turn their enemies' strengths into weaknesses. Park, I want you to work with the engineering teams on developing this EMP system. Wu, start planning coordinated strikes against the planet's major nerve centers. Rodriguez, I want all settlements to begin stockpiling supplies for extended siege conditions. Sir, Voss interjected, are we talking about attacking the entire planet simultaneously? Chen nodded. Not just attacking it, Lieutenant. We're going to teach it what happens when you try to out-evolve a species that turned evolution into a weapon. The plan that emerged over the following weeks was audacious even by human standards. Using salvage technology from the transport ships and materials extracted from Kalara Prime itself, the colonies would construct a network of electromagnetic pulse generators positioned at key points across the planet's surface. When activated simultaneously, these generators would create a cascade effect through the planet mind's own nervous system, temporarily stunning the entire global consciousness. During the window of confusion that followed, human forces would launch coordinated strikes against the planet's most critical infrastructure, the massive organic processes that managed the global ecosystem, the breeding centers where new creatures were created, and the nerve centers where the planet mind's consciousness was most concentrated. It was biological warfare on a scale never before attempted, designed not just to defeat the planet, but to lobotomize it. The construction phase took 3 months. Human engineers worked around the clock, protected by increasingly desperate defensive actions as the planet mind seemed to sense that something significant was being prepared. The attacks became more frequent, more sophisticated, more brutal, but they also became more predictable. The planet mind was learning to fight like humans, which meant it was also learning to think like humans. And humans, Rodriguez observed during one particularly intense battle, had always been their own worst enemy. It's making the same mistake every human general makes eventually, she reported to Chen during a lull in the fighting. It's falling in love with its own tactical brilliance. The attacks are getting more complex, more elegant, more sophisticated, but they're also getting more vulnerable to simple, brutal countermeasures. Chen nodded. He had noticed the same thing. The planet mind was developing a human-like appreciation for tactical complexity, which meant it was also developing human-like blind spots. It was beginning to overthink its strategies, to create elaborate plans when simple ones would have been more effective. It was becoming predictable. And predictable enemies, as every human soldier knew, were dead enemies. The final phase began at dawn on the 6th-month anniversary of humanity's arrival on Kalara Prime. Across 7 colonies and 43 outposts, electromagnetic pulse generators activated simultaneously. The effect was immediate and devastating. Every creature connected to the planet mind collapsed instantly, their nervous systems overloaded by feedback from the global network. The crystalline trees stopped singing, the ground stopped shifting. For the first time since humans had arrived on Kalara Prime, the planet was completely silent. The silence lasted exactly 17 minutes. Then, human forces across the planet began the systematic destruction of everything the planet mind had built over millions of years of evolution. By sunset, Kalara Prime was no longer a death world. It was a conquered world, its global consciousness reduced to scattered fragments struggling to maintain basic life support functions. The unified intelligence that had made it the most dangerous planet in known space had been shattered, replaced by a chaotic collection of individual organisms with no coordination and no higher purpose. Chen stood in what had once been the heart of the planet's nervous system, a vast organic cathedral deep beneath the surface where the planet mind's consciousness had been most concentrated. The structure was still alive, but barely. Its neural tissues flickered with weak bioelectric discharges, like the dying thoughts of a brain-damaged giant. Sir, Voss reported, all colonies are reporting complete success. The planet's organized resistance has collapsed entirely. We're reading massive ecological disruption across the entire surface, but no coordinated counterattacks. Chen nodded, but his attention was focused on something else. In the distance, he could hear the sound of human voices, colonists celebrating their victory, engineers planning new construction projects, soldiers discussing the best locations for permanent bases, the sound of a species that had just conquered an entire world. Lieutenant, he said quietly, open a channel to all colonies. I want to address every human on Kalara Prime. When the channel was established, Chen's voice carried across a planet that now belonged entirely to humanity. People of Kalara Prime, he began. 6 months ago, we were exiled from civilized space because the galaxy considered us too dangerous, too aggressive, too violent for peaceful coexistence. We were sent to a death world that was supposed to humble us, break us, or kill us. He paused, looking around at the ruins of the planet Mind's greatest stronghold. Today we have done something no species in galactic history has ever accomplished. We have conquered a death world. We have turned a planet-sized predator into our hunting ground. We have taken the most dangerous place in known space and made it our home. Another pause as his words echoed across the planet. The Galactic Council was right about one thing. We are too dangerous for their peaceful galaxy. But they made a mistake in thinking that exile would solve their problem. They didn't exile humanity's aggression, they concentrated it. They didn't send us away to die, they sent us away to evolve. Chen smiled, and there was something in his expression that would have terrified anyone who understood what humans were capable of when they set their minds to conquest. Kalara Prime is no longer a death world. It is a human world, and soon the galaxy is going to learn what that means. 2 years after the conquest of Kalara Prime, Ambassador HFY of the Galactic Council received a transmission that would change the course of galactic history. The message originated from the Kalara system, which should have been impossible. The Death World was supposed to have consumed the human exiles within months of their arrival. HFY's 4 eyes focused on the holographic display as the transmission began. What appeared before him was a human male, middle-aged by their standards, wearing some kind of military uniform. Behind him, HFY could see glimpses of what appeared to be a thriving city, complete with gleaming spires and bustling activity. "Greetings, Galactic Council," the human said with a polite smile that somehow managed to be more unsettling than any threat. "My name is Captain Marcus Chen, representing the sovereign human nation of Kalara Prime. I believe we have some things to discuss." HFY felt his protective scales ripple with unease. This was not how communications from death worlds were supposed to begin. "First," Chen continued, "I want to thank the Council for their generous gift of this world. Kalara Prime has proven to be everything you advertised: hostile, dangerous, and absolutely perfect for our needs. The local ecosystem provided exactly the kind of challenge we needed to reach our full potential. The transmission showed images of the planet's surface, but these were not the barren wastelands that HFY expected. Instead, he saw cultivated fields, industrial complexes, and what appeared to be some kind of massive orbital construction project. Where Kalara Prime had once been a chaotic mass of hostile life forms, there was now clear evidence of systematic terraforming and resource extraction. As you can see, Chen explained, we've made some improvements to the local environment. The planet mind that previously controlled Kalara Prime proved to be an excellent sparring partner, but ultimately it taught us some valuable lessons about large-scale ecosystem management. We've since implemented a more efficient approach. HFY's assistant, a Novus Villani named Cheeks, was running sensor scans of the transmission's origin point. "Ambassador," Cheeks whispered urgently, "the energy readings from that system, they're off the scale. Whatever they've built there, it's producing more power than most core worlds." Chen seemed to sense their confusion. "I know what you're thinking. How did a group of exiled humans not only survive on a death world, but actually thrive there?" The answer, honored counselors, is that you fundamentally misunderstood what makes humans dangerous. The human's smile widened, and HFY felt a primitive predator recognition response deep in his brainstem. "You thought our aggression was the problem. You thought our violence was what made us unsuitable for civilized space. But aggression and violence are just tools, Ambassador. What makes humans truly dangerous is our adaptability, our willingness to become whatever we need to become in order to survive and prosper." The transmission shifted to show other scenes from Kalara Prime, humans working alongside creatures that looked like modified versions of the planet's original wildlife. Industrial facilities that seemed to blend organic and mechanical components seamlessly. And everywhere, the sense of a civilization that had not just adapted to its environment, but had fundamentally transformed it. The planet mind that controlled Kalara Prime was indeed a formidable opponent, Chen continued. But it made one crucial error. It tried to teach us to become better hunters without realizing that humans have always been the most successful hunters in our galaxy's history. We don't just hunt prey, Ambassador. We hunt concepts. We hunt challenges, we hunt impossibilities, and make them inevitable. HFY was beginning to understand why his predecessor as Galactic Council Ambassador had insisted on early retirement after the human exile decision. The implications of what he was seeing were staggering. "Now," Chen said, his tone becoming more businesslike, "let's discuss the current situation. The Galactic Council exiled humanity for being too dangerous for civilized space. We've spent the past 2 years on Kalara Prime, becoming significantly more dangerous. This presents both of us with an interesting problem. The transmission showed what appeared to be a massive space station under construction, in orbit around Kalara Prime. The design was unlike anything in Council records, a fusion of organic and technological elements that suggested capabilities far beyond conventional understanding. You see, Ambassador, we've learned some fascinating things during our time here. The planet mind we conquered had been accumulating knowledge for millions of years, collecting data on every species that had ever attempted to colonize this system, including, I should mention, several species that the Council believed to be extinct. Dexai felt his blood temperature drop several degrees. "Cheese," he whispered, "verify the extinction records for the Kalara system." That massive database of biological and technological information has proven quite educational, Chen continued. We now understand exactly how the Council's peaceful galaxy has been maintained for the past 10,000 years. Quite ingenious, really. Any species that becomes too aggressive, too expansionist, too dangerous is either exiled to death worlds or simply disappears from the records entirely. The human paused, allowing the implications to sink in. The problem, of course, is that we didn't disappear, and we've had 2 years to think about what that means for the balance of power in this galaxy. Cheese was frantically pulling up classified Council records, his manipulator appendages trembling as he accessed files that were supposedly beyond top secret. "Ambassador," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "The extinction records. There are discrepancies. Major discrepancies. Species that should be completely gone are showing residual energy signatures in the Death World systems." Chen seemed to be reading their reactions from across the galaxy. "I see you're beginning to understand the scope of the situation. The Galactic Council hasn't been maintaining peace through diplomacy and mutual cooperation, Ambassador. You've been maintaining peace through systematic elimination of any species that might threaten the Council's authority." The transmission shifted again, showing what appeared to be massive mining operations on Kalara Prime's surface. But these weren't ordinary mines. They were excavating what looked like the preserved remains of starships from dozens of different species, some of them millions of years old. The planet mind we conquered had been collecting trophies, you see. Every ship that ever crashed on Kalara Prime, every technology that ever fell to its ecosystem, every piece of knowledge from every species that ever died here. All of it preserved, catalogued, and stored beneath the surface. HFY realized he was hyperventilating, his breathing spiracles fluttering uncontrollably. "This is impossible," he managed. "The death worlds are natural phenomena, random hostile environments that—" Chen's laugh cut him off. "Natural phenomena? Ambassador, the death worlds are weapons. Biological weapons of incredible sophistication, designed to eliminate threats to Council authority while maintaining plausible deniability. Kalara Prime wasn't just hostile, it was intelligently hostile. It was designed to study its victims, learn their weaknesses, and ensure they never left the system." The implications hit Thexai like a physical blow. If the humans had conquered one of the Council's biological weapons, if they had access to the accumulated knowledge of every species that had been eliminated over 10,000 years.
"Now," Chen continued, his tone becoming almost conversational, "we find ourselves in an interesting position.
We could, of course, use what we've learned to expose the Council's methods to the galaxy at large. I suspect the member species would be quite interested to learn how their peaceful civilization has been maintained all these years. Pause. Or we could use the knowledge and technology we've acquired here to begin our own expansion across Council space. The planet mind we defeated had biological and technological capabilities that exceed anything currently in Council arsenals. Combined with human adaptability and strategic thinking, another pause. Longer this time. Or, and this is my personal preference, we could come to an accommodation that benefits everyone involved." Thexai forced himself to focus. This was a negotiation now, not just a revelation. And negotiations were something the Council understood. "What? What kind of accommodation?" he managed. Chen's smile returned, and this time it was almost genuinely friendly. "Simple. The Galactic Council officially recognizes human sovereignty over the Kalara system and ceases all hostile activities directed against human interests. In return, humanity agrees to maintain the Council's secrets and continues to operate outside the boundaries of Council space. That's all you want? Recognition and to be left alone?" Chen chuckled. "Ambassador, I think you're still misunderstanding the situation. We don't want to be left alone. We want the Council to understand that humanity is no longer a problem you can exile or eliminate. We are now a neighbor you need to learn to live with. The transmission showed more images of human activity on Kalara Prime, cities growing at unprecedented rates, industrial complexes producing technologies that seemed to blend organic and mechanical principles, and everywhere, the sense of a civilization that was not just surviving, but actively expanding. You see, we've learned something important during our time here. The galaxy isn't too peaceful for humanity, Ambassador. The galaxy simply wasn't ready for us yet. But 2 years of conquest and adaptation have changed that. Chen gestured to something off-screen, and the view expanded to show the orbital construction project more clearly. It was not a space station, Thexai realized with growing horror. It was a shipyard, a massive, sophisticated shipyard capable of producing vessels that incorporated both captured alien technology and the organic engineering principles learned from the planet Mind. We've solved the Death World problem, Ambassador, not just for Kalara Prime, but potentially for any hostile environment the galaxy can provide. Humans don't just adapt to extreme conditions. We learn to thrive in them. And once we've mastered survival in the most dangerous places in the galaxy, the implication hung in the air like a weapon waiting to be fired. The Council has 3 choices, Chen concluded. You can recognize our sovereignty and learn to coexist with us as equals. You can attempt to eliminate us using the same methods you've used on other species, in which case you'll discover that we're significantly more dangerous than anything you've faced before. Or you can ignore us and hope we go away, in which case you'll eventually discover us on your doorstep with capabilities you can't imagine and intentions you can't predict. Thexai found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. What do you recommend? Chen's expression became serious for the first time during the transmission. I recommend, Ambassador, that the Galactic Council remember why it exiled humanity in the first place. We were too aggressive, too adaptable, too dangerous for your peaceful galaxy. 2 years on Kalara Prime haven't changed that. They've refined it. The human leaned forward slightly. And when he spoke again, his voice carried the absolute certainty of someone who had conquered the impossible and found it merely challenging. We are no longer the species you exiled, Ambassador. We are what that species became when you gave it a death world to practice on. You wanted us to become one with the wild, to be humbled by forces beyond our control, to learn our place in the natural order. Chen smiled one final time, and the expression contained depths of satisfaction that would fuel Thexai's nightmares for years to come. Well, we became one with the wild, Ambassador. We learned that when humans become one with the wild becomes human. We learned our place in the natural order, at the top of the food chain. And we learned that death worlds make excellent training grounds for a species that's preparing to expand its territory. The transmission began to fade, but Chen's final words came through clearly. Thank you for the gift of Kalara Prime, Honored Council. It was exactly what we needed to become what the galaxy needs us to be, the species that hunts impossibilities and makes them inevitable. We'll be in touch soon to discuss the details of our new relationship. The communication ended, leaving Thexai staring at empty air in his council chamber. Around him, automated systems were already analyzing the transmission, calculating threat assessments, and preparing briefings for the emergency session that would inevitably follow. But Thexai wasn't thinking about council procedures or diplomatic protocols. He was thinking about a conversation he'd had with his predecessor, just before the old ambassador's retirement. The humans, his predecessor had said, his voice heavy with something that might have been regret or might have been fear. They asked us to choose between exile and genetic modification. We thought we were being merciful by giving them the choice. We thought exile would humble them. At the time, Thexai had dismissed the comment as the rambling of an old diplomat losing his nerve. Now, staring at the sensor readings that showed impossible energy outputs from what should have been a dead system, he was beginning to understand. The Galactic Council had made a fundamental error in their assessment of humanity. They had assumed that aggression and violence were humanity's primary dangerous characteristics, and that removing humans from civilized space would solve the problem. They had failed to recognize that humanity's real danger lay not in their aggression, but in their ability to adapt that aggression to any challenge, any environment, any threat. They had sent humanity to the most dangerous place they could find, expecting it to break them. Instead, they had given humanity exactly what it needed to evolve beyond the Council's ability to contain or control them. As Thexai began preparing his report for the emergency council session, he couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy was about to change in ways that no one was prepared for. The humans had been exiled for being too dangerous for civilized space. They were about to return, as the species that defined what dangerous meant, and somewhere in the back of his mind, a thought that would have been unthinkable just hours before began to take shape. Perhaps it was time for the galaxy to learn what humans meant when they said they were ready to become neighbors. Whether the galaxy was ready or not, humanity had returned, and they had brought the wild with them. Become one with the wild, they said. Humans became the hunters instead, HFY.